For years, I've been saying that the first deal is one of the key moments on an entrepreneur's journey. But how do you find that first deal? Where do you start? How do you spot an opportunity? Today on The Rebel Entrepreneur, we have Stephen, who runs a successful small business. He's a family man, and you have got to hear the story of his first deal. The first sale can change your world forever. The extraordinary belongs to those that create it. Rebelling against business plans and debt, rebelling against what society expects of us to build cool businesses, make money, have fun, and do good. Let's create something extraordinary together. Welcome to The Rebel Entrepreneur. Welcome to the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast, and I have been looking forward to this episode. I have with me Stephen. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey there, everyone.
And I met Stephen. Sean McHugh, who you will know from the podcast if you listened to season 1, was organising a mastermind, and he invited me on. I had no idea who else was going to be in this mastermind. And there, Stephen, you're part of the mastermind as well.
I am. I've been enjoying it.
It's been an interesting experience, hasn't it? And Sean McHugh has brought together a fascinating group of people. And I don't know why, you sent me this email about how you started your business. And it was the most inspiring startup story. And I thought, this is exactly the message I want to share with the Rebel Entrepreneur audience, exactly the message about how you got going. Have you always run your own business, Stephen?
Not always. When I was in college, I worked at like a engineering consulting firm, and it was just horribly boring. And and I knew pretty quickly that like that's not what I was going to do. I took a first job out of school that was in a city I didn't like, and I was just straight miserable the whole time. But I took that opportunity and the time to start really reading and learning about personal finances and business and all that. And I just took it as like a year and a half of, almost a university, to think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, and just kind of, shut it down and move back to my home city. And without really anything going on, I didn't have any real prospect. And it just started when necessity starts kicking in, like your brain really starts working overtime to find something that works for you, and when you seek it out, you usually find it.
So I find that fascinating. What inspired you to start learning? Because I've discovered through going out there, there's only a small percentage of the population that you would ever consider a lifelong learner, someone who's reading, studying. And I know we've connected over some of the people we follow and listen to and learn from. Where did that desire to learn, self-learn, come from?
Well, it's funny. Like, I think it's, I went to Georgia Tech, which is an engineering school in America here, and pretty rigorous academically. And so like I was used to learning at like a very rapid pace all the time, like just through a fire hose, right? And then so when I got out of school and I got this job, and it was kind of like very routine lifestyle, so I was in a place I didn't really like, and it was hard to meet people. And I'm very gregarious, and I had a really tough time in a very cliquey small town. And so like I just had lots of time on my hands, and I was used to learning so much, like it was a vacuum of not learning anything. So I was just like, man, what I got? All right, here's a library card, free books, let's get them, and just started like plowing through these books. And still to this day, I read very little fiction. It's all like nonfiction. And so there's so much I don't know. When I get to know everything, then maybe I'll move over to fiction and have some fun. But like, I tend to read fiction or nonfiction and watch fiction on TV, right? But yeah, I didn't have much TV down there, and so it was just books, man. I hit the books and really learned a lot. So, and I took a lot of notes.
That is fascinating because I do the same thing. I read nonfiction books. I love knowledge. I love learning. I love then going out and applying it. But that's not what most people do. Most people go, I'm in a new town. I don't know many people. I'll go to the bar. I'll go to the pub. I'll go out and meet people. Not many people say, I'm going to go to the library and check out a load of business books.
I know it sounds terribly lame, doesn't it? And nerdy,
no, it makes me excited. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and this was a bar town too. So I mean, there was bar, but it was a touristy place in Savannah, Georgia, and so. But yeah, I mean, I could spend every night at the bar. You can only go so much, and then you're bored with that. So I joined tennis clubs. I worked out in the gym and did my best to meet people in the best ways I knew how. It was kind of pre-internet, pre-social media time. So, you had to do it old school way. So I made a few friends, but it was tough. So yeah, I hit the books, man, learned a lot, and kind of set the foundation in the philosophy going forward for like doing my own business. I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. I started a few things in college. It kind of flopped. It was a little ahead of its time, maybe not the perfect idea, but I've always been kind of been sales focused. I like the medical industry. That's kind of where I started.
So before we come back to the ideas that didn't work, because there's always fascinating bits there, from the time hitting the books in Savannah, Georgia, was there anything you remember that had a really big impact on you? I mean, what were the books that really hit you, or what were the things you learned in that period?
So, I really started off with maybe like Susie Orman books and more personal finance stuff, Dave Ramsey and like things like that. It's hard to remember all of them. It was a lot of those kind of books, business books, wherever I could pull from the library, just all nonfiction, business related, kind of the stuff that a lot of people read. And it just kind of honed like my thought because, I come from an accountant. My mom's an accountant. So, there was a little bit of that ingrained in me and kind of watching numbers and being frugal and all that. But really, until I kind of came up with my own philosophy on it, it didn't stick. I mean, I don't have any real turning points on there that early. And it was just kind of a base foundation of personal finance type stuff.
Interesting. Because knowing the numbers is going to play a big factor in this. And the numbers, it's really interesting about the numbers of business. So moving forwards, what got you out of the corporate job? What did you go straight into running your business afterwards? Or
yeah, well, what I really didn't like about it was, a smaller footprint company, but still pretty big. And they would say, oh, well, we're going to move you to Fort Lauderdale. And, oh, we're going to move you to North Carolina, maybe. And then we're going to put you in this position. Oh, maybe we'll put you in that position. And they kept I felt like I was getting bounced around, with no real sincerity, and I couldn't plan for anything in my life. It's I couldn't even really plan for what type of cell phone service I wanted because, if you did a 2-year contract and I'm not here anymore, then it was going to cause me a problem. And, all these sort of things, I just didn't like the unknown of where they're going to send me. I didn't like not having control over where I was going to live. I was already in the city I didn't really like it. And the idea of being sent to another city outside of my control, I just didn't like it. So I didn't do it. So I said, thank you. And I spent some time, just learning a few things and making some contacts. And then I just said, I'm out. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything lined up. Maybe not the smartest thing. Didn't have a ton of money saved up at that point. I had a little bit, but I had a little bit of a drain on me in the moment. But I came back. I had a few contacts with that company that I knew. So I reached out to them when I got back and said, hey, I'm in Atlanta. Do you know of anything? As far as it was sales, independent repping is what I was doing. So take over product lines for companies that instead of having their own sales force, they hire, hired guns, salespeople. And what's good about it is you can take on as many companies as you feel like, and you can manage. So I took on a company that did some medical products, and it was kind of I already knew their products because I'd used them in this job. So I was already pretty familiar with them. So they were like, hey, sure, take on. And they already had some business in this territory. So there was already an instant cash stream. It wasn't a lot, but it was something to keep me fed, right? There was already an existing book of business. It was just kind of small. They wanted to grow it. And so went on with the first company, and then they turned me on to another company that they work with a lot, got in with them. So I had a couple different companies that picked up a third, because a lot of times when you're traveling around these small towns, it's if you're only peddling one product, it didn't make sense. You had to call on a number of, there may only be 1 or 2 businesses in that town that could even possibly use your service. So you had to add a few extra. And so I started just adding extra companies that needed sales representation, started picking those up, and they were okay. It got me kind of headed in the right direction and going in and talking to people and kind of feeling out what they needed. And so I ended up adding through a contact of mine, a guy that did repairs on this specific medical device that's in a lot of different offices. And I started basically selling his service because he was horrible at it. He was kind of a back room, repair guy. And he was horrible at selling himself. He had other dealers and other people selling his service, and they would ship the stuff into him. He would fix it, and then they'd mark it up. Bam. So I started doing the same thing locally. Started making money with him. It was great. And so it kind of took me, I was in these offices, and I kept going to these offices, and they'd say, yeah, in the hospitals and stuff, and they say, hey, I don't really need anything repaired, but I've got a bunch of junk back here in the closet that like we want to get rid of. Like, what can you do with that? So I started like looking at that stuff, and I told you the story before, but I had a contact in another city that said, hey, I've got an office that closing down. The doctor retired or whatever, and they're selling all the equipment. So I said, all right, let's go. I'm gonna come out and look at it. So went out there and looked at it, and they priced the stuff out too. There was one machine. I didn't know anything about anything with this stuff. Priced out one machine and said, okay, it's $1,000 for this machine. And so I said, okay, I'm interested. I'll let you know tomorrow or, in a couple of days. So I went out online. I found somebody that had a similar item, a dealer. I called them, said, hey, I've got this item. Would you be interested? They said, sure. And I said, well, how much would you give me for it? And they said, $3,500. I said, okay, I'll do that deal. So go ahead and send me half the money up front and we'll do it. So they sent me half the money up front. I went and used their money, bought the item, packed it up, shipped it to them. Took a little bit of leap of faith that they would send me the back half.
Well, you were already in profit at that stage.
Already made $750 on it, and that was like huge to me. And they paid for it, and real quickly, I made $2,500 with very little risk at all. And bam, that was what I call a magic moment. It's like, okay, this is cool. This fits like a lot of what I like, what I'm good at, negotiating and finding deals and bargains, and the profit margins were great. I said, all right, this is something.
So you're traveling around as a sales rep, going to these different places, and you start to see equipment that's left in the back that's not being used. And that's the sort of aha moment is, I wonder if we could resell that.
Sure. Because there's always an army of, sales reps out there that are doing my job for me, right? They're going out selling the latest, greatest, upgrade this, upgrade that, get the latest. And they just want to get their new product in the door, and all the old stuff just kind of gets pushed into the corner. And so that's when, they have to do something with it. They're either going to toss it in the garbage or they make some money out of it. And I give them a good price, a fair price on it, and turn around and resell it. A lot of times there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a generation or two old, and it would just go back into the food chain a few steps down.
So how do you turn one deal, which I am so impressed with that first deal, the fact you got the money up front to pay for the product and then shipped it, the fact you did it without that risk, without borrowing money to make it happen, that is an incredible first deal. But how do you take that first deal and build a business out of it? Because you've got a team, you've got to financial independence, you've done all this, you've got a team of 3 that does this. How do you take one deal for a piece of medical equipment and build a business?
Well, it started off with a very, very sophisticated and complex business plan that fit on about 2 Post-it notes. And so I sat down. By this time, I'd found there was like an online marketplace, and I found a fellow that was in my area locally. I called him up. I said, hey, I'm getting into this business. Like, I see you're around. Like, let's go have lunch. Talk about it. He said, absolutely. Let's go tomorrow. Let's sit down and have lunch. And so this individual he'd been in the medical equipment business for a while. He'd worked at a repair facility. He already had some experience in it, as well as being a lifelong. I mean, talk about somebody should interview. This guy's insane. But we got together. We talked about kind of the possibilities and maybe partnering up. Probably was kind of crazy at the beginning because, I think Dave Ramsey says the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. And in a lot of cases it's true. And we're no longer together, but we're still friends. We kind of came out of it with a friendship too. We still make money together. And so it kind of worked out, but we got together shortly after that first deal, and like he kind of helped, with some of the technical stuff and like how we do it. But I mean, our business plan was literally, we won't buy anything unless we can triple our money on it. So if we buy it for $1, we have to sell it for $3. If it's under that, it's not worth it. So that was our formula. And and a lot of times it still is today at a minimum, because by the time you go get it, market it, ship it, you don't double your investment or double your money on it. Like, it's probably not a great use of capital when you're buying and selling stuff. When I'm looking at deals and stuff now, it's like, okay, if I can spend $1,000 and get a truckload of stuff that's going to make me $10,000, then like I'm going to do that instead of buying something for $1,000 that I can resell for $1,500. Just because like if I'm going to tie up $1,000, like I'd rather tie it up with something that I'm going to get 10 times the money on versus something I'm barely going to make 50%. So that was the formula. It's like, hey, 3 times their money. If we can find something we can buy for 3 times and sell it for 3 times, like, bingo, let's get it. Let's do it. It makes sense. And so that's basically what we've done. It's an extremely complex process. And you think like, oh my gosh, like, the stock market's returning 6% and whatever. And how can you find a deal that's going to make 300% on, stuff? Well, they're everywhere. It's out there everywhere. I mean, every time you go to the McDonald's and you buy a Coke out of the soda fountain, they're making, 100% on that, or, 500% markup on that. It costs them like 15 cents and they're selling it for $1. There's margins like that everywhere. You just have to find them.
That's fascinating. So there's so much I want to say. You've just got to find them. How do you spot these opportunities? So you're going out there in the world. For the uninitiated that steps out into the world, how do I see this? Because I'm like you, Stephen. I see opportunity everywhere. But how do you see it? How do you find opportunity?
Let me go back before we find the opportunity. The other part of the business plan, the complex business plan, was that we don't believe in accounts receivable. I pretend like it doesn't exist, right? A lot of businesses run on 30-day terms. Hey,
yes.
Get the product. We're gonna pay you 30 days. The way I looked at it then and today is like, okay, I'm a small business. I'm really a nothing, a micro business in the world of business. Okay, and if I'm selling something to a hospital or a large business or whatever, how absurd is it for me, a little micro nothing, to give a 0% loan to a multi-million-dollar company for 30 days or 60 days? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like, who would you loan anybody money for 30 days at 0% interest? No, it's absurd. So, like, why would you do that with your product? Like, you've already paid for the product, you've got it in stock, you've delivered it, you've paid for the delivery, all these things you've added to it, and then you're going to wait on your money for 30 days. No, never done it. Won't do it.
So how do you get them to pay you straight away? Do they pay on delivery? How does that happen? Because a lot of times big companies just say, these are the deals, that's it.
Well, that's the thing. If they won't do it, they don't need it bad enough, and you don't need their business either. I'd rather find 2 customers that'll pay you on time and when you deliver it, because when it comes to business, it is all about cash flow. It's not talked about enough in podcast and business saying. Business is nothing but cash flow. If you don't have it, it'll choke you right out and you won't make it. If you don't believe me, like right now with the COVID stuff going on, how many businesses are just had to take PPP loans and all that because their cash flow just choked them right out? It stopped, and they didn't have enough savings to back up, their cash flow. And more than anything, you got to have profitable sales and keep cash flow coming. And if you get paid when you deliver the stuff, guess what? You got cash and you can do the next deal. If you don't, what's bad is it puts you in such a bad position when you let somebody have accounts receivable on you and like you're waiting on the money to come from whatever business in 30 days or 60 days or whenever they feel like really paying you because they're bigger than they know they are and they can wait you out and, oh, well, we didn't get the invoice. I mean, how many times has anybody out there heard that? Like, oh, we must have misplaced the invoice. There's a lot of games that get played too, Oh, you didn't put the date, you didn't put the date or the PO number or whatever on the invoice. So yeah, we can't pay it. It's going to be another 30 days before we cut checks. All that is garbage. I've had very large businesses, multi-million-dollar companies. I'll say, look, I'd be happy to sell this thing to you, but we're just going to have to get paid on, up front. And if you insist and push, they will pay you. They will do it. Like, you just have to be insistent on it. There is no policy in the world that says they can't. They're playing the game. They want to pay you in 30 days, like make their money last longer, in their pocket. Like it's the way it's done. But as a small business person, a micro business, you don't need it. You don't need it. And I've been in business for 15 years. It's not the longest in the world, but I'm still kicking through like 2 major recessions. And I think it's all because of I have no outstanding accounts receivable, and I never have.
I love that. And I used to work for one of the major manufacturers it's a Japanese manufacturer of televisions, electronics, and all of that stuff. And I remember going to they do the like yearly events where the management team get up and tell you what's going on. And I was in there and they were talking about the finances, and something that stuck with me to this day. They were talking about if they could increase the period between when money came in to when money went out by a day. So if they could make the suppliers wait a day longer, or they could make the people buying it pay a day earlier, so they've got the money in their bank longer. With the volume of money that was going through their accounts, it was worth £1 million, so like 1.2,
Yep.
$1.3 million in interest a day.
Yep. For the uninitiated out there, it's called the float. And it can be a big number. A lot of times PayPal, all those guys, like their whole thing, they hold, money can be transferred instantly these days. I mean, in an instant, right? But PayPal waits 2-3 days for you to offload your money into your bank account. That's pure float. They're just holding, think about the millions and millions of dollars that they're holding in their account for 2 extra days, getting interest off of them. That's what it is.
And they have done that to me. PayPal are notoriously bad at releasing money. They make you wait so long and put so many hurdles in front of you. They drive me mad, that company.
Yep.
That's fascinating. So look, cash flow, biggest killer of small businesses.
Absolutely.
Number one killer of small businesses. What are your tips on cash flow? How should we think about it?
Let me think about that. But I think cash flow and trying, and I've heard Dave Ramsey say this before, like trying to, kill an elephant when you're just starting out. It's like you get excited, like, oh, I've got this big account or this big deal. And people try to extend and try to get that big deal to, and it's too big for them. Like that's another thing I've done. I've never tried to take on a deal that was too big for where I was at, right? You can get there later, right? But if it's going to require you to go into debt to buy a big piece of equipment or to fund the inventory or whatever, then okay, what happens if you take out a loan of $50,000 to fund the inventory for this big purchase for this big company, and then they don't pay you for 90 days, and then you can't pay, or something happens and they say, oh yeah, or they go out of business, whatever, you're stuck. And so I think it's like doing what you can for what size you are and just being realistic about it. That's another thing that people overextend, try to grow too fast. That thing, it'll kill you right out.
Absolutely. So the first deal you did, you generated $2,500 profit, which is phenomenal for a first deal. Is that the profit? Did you use the profit to do the second deal, or how did it go from there? Where did you go from there?
I think I'm still using that profit to buy stuff even today. Yeah. So, I mean, then it became like, all right, here's the treasure hunt. Let's go. Let's start looking turning over every rock, looking in every closet, trying to find more of this stuff. And yeah, it's been going like that. It started off in the medical field, and then now it's moved into virtually anything. I mean, we buy any kind of business related equipment, forklifts, trucks, inventory, whatever we can get our hands on that fit our formula. And a lot of that's finding motivated sellers. That's the key. You got somebody that I got plenty of time. I don't have to move it out anytime soon. And those are not going to be your best deals, right? You have to look for people that it's a win-win. They want something done in a quick time, or they have a deadline and just want it out, want it gone, whatever, or want the job done fast. They don't care. Those are the ones you're looking at. You look for motivation. And I'll tell you, one of the best places I've found for motivation is where change happens. I say, where there's change, there's opportunity. So a lot of people shy away from change, and it makes them nervous and they're scared. I love it. Right now I'm just in hog heaven because there's so much change. There's so much change going on in the world right now with the COVID thing, and everything's moving, right? And so anytime there's change, there's going to be opportunity. Change of seasons, change of marital status, change of when you move your house, when your business changes direction. Anytime there's change, there's going to be massive opportunity, which goes back to like where you find opportunity. You look for change. I mean, anytime you hear somebody like, oh yeah, I'm got to do this, or, we had to do, change direction and go this way, like, boom, there's something there. Somebody moved out of state, boom, there's opportunity. They're going to be wanting to get rid of stuff, whatever it is, you put your label on it. It's going to be, there's opportunity there.
So you invest your money, you buy things, and then you flip them online.
Yeah. Or we do active and passive selling. So like we'll get stuff, call around, try to game plan businesses or people that would maybe want the stuff, call them direct, put it online, eBay, wherever. We try to move it quick and keep the money rolling, because that's the other thing. I try not to keep a whole lot of inventory, because inventory, you sink a lot of money into inventory, and it's just dead money. You want to keep it rolling, because even if your return is 25%, or even if you just doubled your money, like as long as you keep it churning, the more times you double it, the bigger the number gets. So that's the thing. You got to keep it rolling. You sit on it, it tends to, money never stays stagnant. It's never static, right? It's either going up or it's going down. And so obviously you want it kind of going up, right? So if you keep it moving, it's going to go up. If you sit it still, it's going to go down, right? You have cost of living goes up. You have inflation, all that stuff. It's eating it up. It's getting smaller. So you got to keep it moving, keep it invested, keep it rolling, and it goes up. But it's never going to stay the same.
So you keep the money moving, you keep doing the deals.
Yep.
One thing I'm fascinated with, sales has come up a few times in the conversation now. How did you learn to sell?
Yeah, I don't think you have to be like a great, you think of like the people on TV selling stuff on QVC and stuff, like that's like a weird sales thing. Most people don't like that. Like it's a gimmick. It's kind of weird. A lot of times, like the stuff I've always had is it kind of sells itself, right? Like you have stuff that's good. You offer it out there. Like some people already kind of want stuff. Like if you really got to push it, it's not really my thing. If you really got to go out and beat the streets and push it, like I've just never really done that. Like I've always just had stuff for sale and put it out there, and it's kind of sold itself, I guess. I mean, there's a little bit of salesmanship when you get somebody on the phone, and like what I've found a lot of times is just knowing what not to say. Not really what to say. It's like what not. Like sometimes you can shoot yourself in the foot by saying something dumb, and a lot of it's just confidence, like giving the people confidence in the product that you're selling. So, oh, it's great. Like it's going to, this is like one of the best ones in the market. You're not going to have any problem with it. If you do, you just call us back. Like we're going to take care of it. Like it's really it's more about confidence. Like people knowing that if they buy something from you, especially I do a lot of secondhand stuff, like we're going to make it right no matter what. Cause that's like everybody's fear is like getting something and it not working and then them being stuck with it, and out of their money. Right. That's like the cardinal rule not to do in business. It's like we take your money, we send you the item, and you get a good product. If you don't, we're going to make it right. Just like that. Because, along with the accounts receivable, thing, like typically we make people pay up front before we ship something out. I don't have the time or the resources or the people to hunt down money. I hate doing it. I hate begging for my money from people that already have the product that I sent them. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I kind of equate it to like, I don't know where I heard it. If I just thought about it, we talked about it. Like it's the difference between like going to McDonald's and you pay the money up front and you get the meal versus like going to a restaurant where you sit down, the waitress or waiter comes over and they try to their best to please you. The cooks have already cooked the meal, all these things happen. And at the end, then you decide whether it was good enough to pay for the meal, you know what I mean? And tip the waitress. Like that's the difference, right? Like, and so I'd rather be the McDonald's, like, hey, you throw my money up front or whatever restaurant that, Chipotle, whatever you go to, and like you give them the money up front, you get the meal versus like, hey, I get the meal up front. And then then it's balls in my court whether I really want to pay it or I want to cause a stink and decide what I want to pay or whether I liked it or not, So that's kind of part of it.
I always find this one fascinating because if you think about Amazon, you wouldn't write an email to Amazon and said, look, ship me the new laptop, send it to me. I'm going to test it for 30 days, make sure I like it, and then I'll pay you afterwards. Like yeah. Amazon's not going to do that. But for some reason, when people start new businesses and they're selling business to business, or even when they're selling to consumers, they feel like they need to do the work first. And a lot of this is down to confidence, I think.
Yeah.
So where did your confidence come from, Stephen?
I don't know. I think I've always been like naturally confident. I think a lot of what business is and success in business is just confidence. Like, and a lot of it's putting out the vibe, like that you're going to do what's right for somebody, no matter what. Like, hey, you buy this from me, whether you pay me up front or when I'm done with the job or whatever, like it's going to be right, or I'm going to make it right. And so I don't know really where it's come from with me, but confidence is huge. I mean, if you doubt yourself, why would anybody else trust you or have confidence in you? So you have to put an air of confidence on the business, and I think a lot of times a lot of contractors and stuff they ask for money up front, part of the the deal up front, and people have hear stories about people getting burned and this and that, and I found like it's funny, some of the customers that I've dealt with over the years, like the ones that are the most free with money and say, hey, I'm going to send you the payment, send me the items, and they're just trustworthy. Like I bend over backwards to not earn their trust, but like make sure that since they instilled trust in me, is to deliver for them, right? Now, the one that calls you and it's like, well, how about I'll get it and I'll look at it first, and then then I'll send you half the payment, and all that. Like, those are the ones that are going to be a problem because they have such a trust problem. You're not going to do well over time. You have to be trustworthy. And I mean, I send money all over the country to buy things. I'm sending it into the air. Like, somebody could walk and just never take my phone call again. But I've been so lucky over like 15 years to like, it's only happened one time, for like $800. And I've just been lucky like that, I guess. And I've gotten to where I can tell there's certain verbal cues I can kind of take and kind of head that off. But I'm sorry, we got off topic.
Well, it's interesting. So every week in your business, you start, and do you go out and find the deals at the beginning of each week, or how does this work?
Yeah, and it's really random. Like, sometimes it'll be nothing going on, and we'll get a phone call, and it's like, all right, go time, and like we'll go and just load up. It's just so random, and it's like it's one of those things I've learned to just have faith in it, because like I've been doing this for a long time, and every single week, I have no idea where money's coming from. Like, on Monday morning, like, there's usually zero prospects, right? Which is like, some people just can't imagine this lifestyle, or like, much less not having a paycheck every Friday, but like every week, just have no idea where cash flow is coming from, because we don't have any sort of set, steady, all right, we know we're shipping 100 boxes of X, a week to certain businesses. Like, that's just not how it works with us. So yeah, I mean, we just have to rely on like finding things, bringing them in. Sometimes they need work, and there's just a pipeline. We just keep stuff out there. And after a while, we built up enough things that there's enough stock to where something's always kind of selling, but it's not guaranteed, right? So some weeks are pretty bad. Some weeks are just incredible. Every time you pick up the phone, people are throwing money at you. But you just don't know. But it's kind of random. We live kind of in a random in a business, just my particular business. But there's a lot of businesses that aren't. There's a lot of, depending on what you're doing, like, it's pretty structured and predictable. And that's typically how people like it, a little better. But I've just been doing it so long, I'm totally used to it. And what I've found too is like, it almost helps with motivation, because it's easy when you're shipping 100 boxes every week, and it's going to be X, like, to get lazy, right? We don't get lazy. Like, every week we know we got to hunt and kill something, or drag it back, or we're going to be hungry, and everybody on the team knows that. So it's like, everyone's focused on bringing in cash in the door, and what can I do today to either get something ready to be sold, or to sell something, or to upsell something to someone to make that number. So it actually is kind of a motivator.
So it sounds like a treasure hunt every day. It sounds like you start every week with a new map going, where's the treasure?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's not the most efficient, right? But like, at this point, it's gotten to where it's just fun. That's just what we do. Like, some days I'll buy an old vintage car or something that's been left in the woods somewhere, and we'll turn around and sell it to Tyler Perry Studios. And it's like, okay, weird. And then some days we'll buy a forklift and turn around and sell it. Other days, we've bought antiques. It's just totally random. I guess it's kind of like a pawn shop if you think about it. But as long as it fits in our formula and it's got a reasonable idea of selling, we'll do it. But we focus on business, more business assets.
So when you're looking at a deal, how do you know whether to say yes or no? Because that would be my question. I'm looking at, and I was fascinated this. My dad did exactly the same thing with different deals. He would, like, a supermarket had gone bankrupt, so he bought all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, I'm coming back to the warehouse. I've got a truck full of freezers. Go buy extension cables because we need to plug them all in. Otherwise, the food's going to go off. So I'm scrambling around buying extension cables. We're plugging in freezers. Now I'm selling frozen pizza. I've never done that before. And it's the most random deals every day. But how do you know whether to do the deal or not? Like, someone's selling something.
Yeah.
You see it online. You see it in real life. How do you know?
Sometimes it just kind of calls out to you. And there's no real, like, you don't know why you're buying it. Really, sometimes, like, you think it's cool, and it's like something in me says, like, we need to get this, and if I like it, somebody else is going to like it, probably at a higher price. And then the other part is just like, it's just, does it fit in the formula? Like, do we have a pretty good chance of doing this, or selling this stuff in a reasonable amount of time? And reasonable is up for debate. And really, in any investment, like the risk is about the price you pay for it, right? So if you pay dirt money for something, a whole supermarket full of stuff, like, well, after you sell the first two items, like you're in the money. So the risk is extremely low. It's kind of a risk versus return on investment that you have to kind of, and hassle. Is it something that is going to be an entirely huge hassle and not be a great return? In the meantime, you're risking a lot of money. Like, no, I'm not going to do it. If it's something that's like, all right, it's going to be a big hassle, but we're getting it for dirt cheap and it's got a great potential for making a good money, like, boom, we're doing it. So it's kind of that trifecta of like return, risk, and hassle on the sliding scale of which one that one's closest to. And if it's close to only one of them, like, okay, let's do
it. I love that view of return, risk, and hassle, because some of the deals they can be unbelievable hassle. And I guess there's a speed element, isn't there? So
yeah, on speed wise, like the only time I break the formula is like if I know it's something I'm going to flip directly to someone. Like I already have it sold, and it's like, okay, I bought it for $1,000. I'm going to sell it for $1,800, and I'm never even going to have to touch it, and it's going to go straight to another dealer or a friend of mine or something. And like, I'm just going to collect the $800, and there's not going to be much hassle for me. It's just really just a little bit of logistics, or whatever. Boom. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that money all day long. But if it's something I'm going to bring into inventory and like have to work on, like then the return needs to be more.
So if you were giving some advice to new entrepreneurs who are starting out launching businesses, one of the things we talk about continuously is starting up with no cash. Yep. And you did exactly what we talk about, which is sell it before you buy it. So you actually generated the money before you even did it. You used the customers' monies to begin. I love that. If you're speaking to new entrepreneurs, what's the advice you give to them about starting and getting going and borrowing money and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I would say first, like the place that when looking for something to do to make money, right? You want to look at the fastest and quickest way to start making money on something is find something like you already kind of have a talent in or that you like, because any of this stuff like takes time and effort, right, to do. And like you're willing to invest more energy and time into something if you already kind of enjoy it or you're already kind of good at it. If you're a nurse or something and then like you're going to try to, step out and like be a baseball telecaster, like it's not going to work. Like unless you're just extremely passionate about it, like just because you can make money doing it, like I don't know if that's a great example, but like you'd have to like go and learn communication skills and like how to do it and then go, you're like going in a total different direction. Like, but if you stopped being a nurse for a hospital and then you went in, did like a home care company or something, and it's like, it's close to what you already know. There doesn't take a whole lot of like new retooling for you to do it. So like, that's the kind of stuff, like take a look at like what talents you already have and interests you already have and what assets you have, whether it's a pickup truck, whether it's a garage to store stuff. Is it, a contact, somebody and kind of narrow it down with that. And the other thing is like look for people like me. I've kind of got my own thing going. I'm focused on what I'm doing, but like I see opportunities, and probably more so in like bigger businesses, people that work at bigger businesses, like they see opportunities that we don't get to see, and they may say, okay, man, somebody could really make a good living like providing this little service to our business that we can't find or whatever. And like ask people like, hey, I'm thinking about going to business, like, and this is kind of what I'm thinking about doing. Like, do you have any ideas for me or know of anything? Because a lot of times it's something that's not being addressed in these bigger companies, and you could start right there, and it's not really worth the big company getting into the business of doing that or whatever, but you could step right in and start making money for them, and then you add customers as you go. Because I see stuff all the time like, hey, I can make money doing this, but it's not worth, the return isn't big enough for me to get interested in it personally. It's like I could make $1,000 a week doing X, Y, and Z or whatever, but like, hey, it's not worth my time at that level at this point. But for someone starting out or like doing like a little second side hustle, like it'd be huge. It'd be great. So that's where you have to kind of ask around and talk to people, because a lot of people see opportunities, but they just either can't act on them or don't want to, or it's not worth their time. So I would consider that probably good advice, and doing stuff that other people refuse to do or don't want to do. That's a great way to make a living. I mean, some of the nastiest jobs, they make the most money. You know,
What are you thinking of when you say nasty jobs, Stephen?
I don't
Because
know.
my mind goes dark.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, there's a lot of dark stuff in there that I could go to. But I mean, I've just been thinking, I've been driving around lately and been looking at like a lot of commercial businesses and places like, a lot of them have retention ponds here in America. Like, you have to have retention ponds where the water runs off your parking lot, whatever. And every time you see one of those things, like, they've got great manicured lawns and everything, but their retention pond looks like a jungle.
Yep.
So, like, I'm pretty sure you could have a great business going around to these like large companies and medium-sized companies and gas stations and stuff, and just clearing out their retention ponds. Like, that's all you do is retention pond like maintenance, because for whatever reason, like the lawn care companies don't want to do it, and so like it's because it's kind of it's like it's jungly, like it's it's taking a lot more physical labor. You're not just riding on a lawnmower and cruising at 20 miles an hour, and so like there's a huge opportunity, and they're everywhere. So those are kind of things that, like, doing stuff that other people are just like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like crawling under houses and like crawl space and stuff. Like, nobody wants to do that. Like, man, you can make a fortune, like, lining people's crawl spaces with plastic. They'll give you a blank check. Charge me whatever you think. Here's my wallet. Give me back as much as you think I deserve after doing it, because I sure as heck don't want to get under there, So I don't know. Like, I've kind of made a list of things that, like, for people starting up, like, just ideas that, like, that you could start up without needing much money at all or none, right? That I've just identified kind of over time and just thinking about them. Like, so a lot of times we see like large companies when they're selling bulk stuff, they sell them in lots of 100 or 200 or 500 or whatever it may be. And there's companies out there I've seen or I've heard about that, like, all they do is break boxes, right? So if they only sell them in lots of 1,000, like, they buy them in a lot of 1,000 and break them into lots of 100 and resell them and mark it up, 30%. Because not everybody needs 1,000 or something. Not everybody needs 100, like, they may only need 15 bolts or widgets or whatever. Like, so you can make money just buying something in bulk and breaking it down into smaller units and selling them online. The other thing too, like buying stuff from China that only comes from China that takes 3 weeks to get here. Well, sometimes I want it tomorrow and I want to wait 3 weeks. So, like, if someone in America would already bought it and been sitting on an inventory of 5 or 10 of them and marked them up, 50%, I just buy them from them for 50% more just to have it fast. So that's something else that, like, and most of that stuff's super cheap. It's just a timing thing. I know a guy that he works 2 months out of the year putting up Christmas lights. He makes enough money in 2 months out of the year to not work the rest of the year. And, like, he's not poor. You know what I mean? Like, he just gets after it for 2 months out of the year and just chills the rest of the time. Consignment businesses, those are great. Like, no money required down. Like, people need help selling stuff. They don't want to be taking 100 phone calls and whatever. You take the phone calls, you sell it for them, meet the people at their place, whatever. You get a commission. Bam, you're in business. Bird dogging for people. Like, I can't be in every place all the time. I can't be all over the internet looking at all these auctions and places and doing all this stuff. So, like, hey, I'd pay somebody to be a bird dog for me and be looking around and hunting certain items and any business that's looking for particular things, whether it's antiques or jewelry or whatever, looking for people to find stuff for them. So being a finder, getting finder's fees, managing people's rentals or Airbnbs, like, and not being a real estate agent. You don't have to be a real estate agent to do that, at least not in America. But, like, it could be a hassle, like taking the emails and the phone calls and, managing the maids and the people coming in. Like, you can make lots of money. There's a lot of people that don't want the hassle, but they have the asset. That's something that requires zero capital up front, just a little bit of organization and time.
See, what the theme I'm kind of getting here is where there's a problem. And I think that's what you're spotting when you see an opportunity is someone's got a problem. There's a way to fix it and to make it easier. That seems to be the theme.
Oh, I look for complainers, man. I love complainers because anytime someone's complaining, it means they have a problem that's not being addressed. And so, like, when someone's like, "Oh, I can't find anybody to do this," like, boom, my ears perk up. So yeah, I have that on my note. Like, look for people that have hassles, that don't like hassle, and just take over their hassles for them. Say, "Yeah, I'll take over your hassle." And if it's something you already kind of enjoy, or that's something that you're going to learn from, it's gold. Like, do it for free. If it's something you're going to get experience and learn from, and you're having trouble like getting anybody to pay you for it first, do it for free, and then you have experience. I know a guy in my neighborhood that people are constantly moving in and out of the city, and whenever they post moving boxes, he goes and picks up all the moving boxes. And when someone posts, "Hey, I'm looking for moving boxes," he sells them to them. And then he picks up, and so he just basically is transferring cardboard moving boxes from one house to the other and like makes money doing it. And it's like, how easy can it get? So, I mean, it's like really like they say there's no such thing as a money problem. It's just an idea problem. Like you just don't have the ideas. And so because there's money everywhere. There's ideas, there's ways to make money all over the place. It's like really, you just have to kind of open your eyes and tune your brain into it.
I love that. And one of my favorite bits you said there is, I listen out for the complainers. So for everyone listening to this podcast, find the complainers, the people that are complaining. There is an opportunity there to fix something and charge for it, and an unbelievable opportunity at that. Stephen, can you believe that we've been chatting now for an hour? Can you believe that?
It's, I can totally believe it, man. Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. So look, we've got a motivated audience who are out there building businesses, making money. Your story is really inspiring of how you spotted an opportunity, flipped it, worked out how to grow that business. It's so inspiring. What's the closing message you would want to leave with early stage entrepreneurs who are just getting out there and making it happen? What would you want to say to them?
Well, I think what you have to do is like, you have to do something that you're having a good time doing it, and not just for the money. I just read this the other day. It's like, don't let life fly by on dollar bill wings. And like, it's true, right? Like once you get in the mix of this and I've seen people that do business just because they make money at it, and they really don't care that much. It's something that's kind of inconsequential, selling janitorial supplies and stuff. And it's like, oh, what? Like, yeah, you can make money doing it, but like, does it really feed you, like your soul and make you whole and feel good? Like when everything's in tune and you're doing something that you're made to do and you're having fun doing it, and like money will cascade over you. And so like, is it really worth your life's energy and attention to do something that like, yeah, you're being an entrepreneur and you're getting it done, but like that you're just making money. It's just about making the money. It's not like doing something that you really are, got your whole heart and head behind. Because when it is, like, you'll make way more money. That was one of the things that, like, our friend Sean, when I went from being a independent rep and taking those companies on, I got to the point to where I was still taking the money from the companies and just not performing as much sales for them as I should. It was kind of on autopilot, and I was collecting the check from the work I'd done and the previous stuff, but really, like, my heart wasn't in it anymore. But it was holding me back, and I was like, I still got to go make these calls, and like, but I see this opportunity with this, this other stuff. And Sean's like, look, man, you got to cut it loose and go full into this other thing. And as soon as I did that, like it just skyrocketed because like all my attention focused on it, and boom, it was off to the races. And since then, I hadn't looked back. But like if I would have, kind of clung to that little steady bit of money and like kind of kept that in my, in my belt, it would have dragged me down and taken longer for me to really be doing the fun stuff I've been doing for so long. It's just like I was just scared a little bit even though I was already kind of out on my own, I was scared to just cut that cash source income stream loose and focus directly on what I was doing. But as soon as I did it, like it made all the difference in the world, and it started all coming together.
Stephen, I love that advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being part of it. If the audience want to find out more about what you do in your business, is there any way they can look, or will you just turn up in their lives and try and sell them something at some stage, or do they find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can. If you want, we can post some info on the on the podcast, a link or something, and they can contact me directly, or I'd be happy to answer questions, or they can email me, call me, whatever, and we could talk about their situation, or I'd love to hear their stories too. I just like talking to entrepreneurs. It's always fun, and sometimes you get great advice from them. That somebody has seen something similar to what you do and say, hey, this is a better way to do it, or I know somebody else doing it and they're doing this, and so yeah. I'd love to hear from any of them.
So that was the episode with Stephen. I've got 3 things I wanted to highlight for you. The first was get the money up front. Cash flow is so important, and nearly every business we come across is built from debt, not from profit. But Stephen managed to get out there and get his first deal and sell it before he'd even bought it. So cash flow is critical. Get the money up front. The second thing I'd love to give you is this thought of finding the complainers. I love this idea. Find the people who have problems, find the people who are complaining and help them fix it. There is unbelievable opportunity in the complainers. So for the next week, every time you talk to someone, listen for the complaints. And the third thing I would love to give you is based on Stephen's ability just to talk to people. It doesn't seem to matter whether it's someone on the side of the street, someone on the phone. He just picks up the phone. He just talks to people. He just meets people. And I think, me included, we get nervous about talking to strangers. And that's some old programming from when we were younger. You just need to pick up the phone. You just need to talk to people. You just need to speak to the people who are in the room with you, because you never know where it's going to lead. So over the next week, start some conversations and see where it goes. What an episode. Thank you for listening to The Rebel Entrepreneur. And go out there, if you haven't found your first deal yet, start now and start working on that first sale. You can have any life you want to. Choose to build something cool. Choose to take action. Choose to work to make your dreams become reality. Stand out. Be different. Be yourself. Be a rebel entrepreneur.